gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and today I'm going to be reviewing Movie Empire, a worker placement game about making movies from Stimulus Games. Movie Empire is a worker placement game where you are performing various actions across these 4 boards, as well as in Mr. Grumpy's office, which I've just placed off to the side, in order to score the most points by producing the most and the most successful movies. All of these boards can be arranged in a way of your choosing, and they all have alternate art on the back. So if you want to change your game setup, that is possible in this game. At the beginning of each turn, you're going to get an annual plan from Mr. Grumpy, who's the boss of your studio. And whether he's happy with you is going to have a big impact on how you do in this game. So starting in round 2, you'll reveal annual plans from Grumpy that might place restrictions on what you're able to do on a turn or prioritize certain types of movies that he is looking for you to produce. And you definitely want to make Mr. Grumpy happy because your success in the game depends in part on your budget, and your budget depends on how much he likes you. So every player is going to have an individual board, and Grumpy starts out feeling sort of middling about you, and you get $3 per round as a result. The more Grumpy likes you, the better things are. Not only do you get more money, but you get an extra space so you can work on producing 2 movies at a time. Normally you're restricted to 1, and you only have 1 movie and a super tight budget if Grumpy is not too impressed with you. And you track your budget up here in this left corner. Once you've had your Grumpy phase, it's time to work, and what that means is that you assign all of your little workers, who are these little dudes, to various spots around the board. You'll begin the game with a starting script, but if you want scripts, you can come up here and grab one. So you have things like the Cat Father or Sinking Ship, which are illustrated and named in funny ways that are references to popular movies. Each script that you pull is going to have a different point value, and in order to actually get the points for the script of a movie that you produce, you're going to not only have to produce the movie, but you have to produce it with this specific configuration of cards. So there will be production cards that you can look at down here, and you need to arrange the correct number of them in the correct way in order to produce a movie and get credit for the script. Up here you can also purchase movie stars. So if you're looking for a star for your movie, you can pay the money up in the top right corner and potentially get the amount of points that are in the top left corner. Some stars are up for anything, but others are going to have restrictions. For example, this one, Mac Pickerson, does not want to appear in any action movies. So there's a bit of planning involved in terms of what kind of movie you'd like to make and what kind of stars are available. Down here you have production cards, and these are the cards that you need to arrange in order to fulfill your script. So up here in your player area, you'll place the script that you are trying to produce, and then you'll have a row of production cards that you are adding to hopefully try to fulfill the conditions of that script and score points for it. There are placement rules, however, so you can't just place cards haphazardly. There is some strategy to how you place them and in what order you place them, if you're actually going for a complete set of cards for your script. However, you are permitted to just go ahead and produce movies even if they don't match the script. You just don't get the points. So each of these cards is also going to contribute points towards your movie, and the only one that you actually technically need in order to produce a movie is one of these blue cards. In fact, when you set up the game, you are instructed to make sure that the top and bottom halves of the deck each have an equal number of these blue cards, because without one, you can't produce your movie at all. However, if you do have a blue card, then you can just produce your movie even if it's garbage. You might not get the same points for it, but sometimes some points now are better than a lot of points later. If none of these cards are doing it for you, you can also send workers over to this board over here. This is where you can do things like charge your credit card to get extra money for your budget, kiss up to Grumpy and make him like you a little bit better. And if there aren't any production cards here that you're looking for, you can place a worker to draw 2 from the deck and hope that you get what you've been needing. And then at the end of the round, after you've placed all of your workers, and you'll have placed one on this board if you want to take this action, you get to produce movies. So you get different bonuses depending on what region of the world you produce your movies in, and you also get bonuses depending on whether your movie was on trend. So here you get a special reward for producing action movie because that is what is currently trendy. You can also see ahead a couple of rounds, so you know that next round, art house movies are going to be hot, and then after that, people will be looking for ensembles. So if you're having a hard time getting the card you need to complete a script, you can score by just picking up okay enough production cards, producing movies that are on trend, and adding stars to your film in order to bump up that point value, even if you're not quite meeting your script requirements. Movie Empire comes with a lot of parts you can add and remove. For example, if you don't want to play with a grumpy face, you don't have to. And in the multiplayer game, there is the possibility of getting what are called black dossiers that allow you to play a pretty nasty take that game with your companions. However, I'm a solo gamer, so what I was interested in as an add-on is the solo mode. And there is an AI opponent called Archibald Leach who gets his own player board, his own set of workers, and interestingly, his own scripts to work with and programming cards that tell you how he's going to play. There's an easy mode and a hard mode for him that will change the scale of the victory points that he earns. So if you feel like you need a challenge, that is possible with Archibald. And basically when you play against him, you play your turn as normal, but then Archibald will constantly be checking his production line, adding to it to build out his own scripts, producing movies that are on trend, and playing these behavior cards that are going to tell you what he is going to do. The rulebook shows you how to build a deck for him and also gives you a pretty handy list of priorities. For example, if Archibald can't take one of the actions that his behavior deck would require, then there's actually a list of priorities so you can figure out what to do instead, which I thought was nice. Archibald also has a variable number of workers. So if he is ahead of you in points, he only places 2 workers out on the board. But if he's behind you, he has a bit of a catch-up mechanic where instead he's able to place 3 workers. So depending on how you're doing against him, his gameplay is going to vary a little bit, which I also thought was a good touch. So now for some final thoughts. I'll start with what I liked about Movie Empire. The first positive for it is that the art is good, and the little movie titles and stuff are pretty cute. This is clearly a game that's made by somebody who really likes movies, and you can see it in the little jokes on the cards, and in the love put into the art for the game. The art definitely has that vibe of, I guess, like a bro cartoon that all the college guys quote at each other as a bonding ritual, and that's totally fine by me. It looks good. The other thing I appreciate about it is that there was an honest effort made at creating a good solo mode. Playing against Archibald is interesting because he really does work according to certain priorities, and the extra decks that are made for him do create a challenge for somebody who's playing this game. I also like that he works with 2 workers or 3, depending on how he's scoring compared to you, because it gives him a nice little catch-up mechanic, and it also gives you one as well, so he can't totally run away with the game. So kudos for a thoughtful solo mode. However, to be honest, this game does not rank very high for me on the tomato meter. The game works, but I think that it could be better. My first complaint is with the rulebook. It took a lot of effort for me to figure out what this game wanted from me based on the wording in the rulebook. The rulebook reads like something that's written by a person who absolutely knows how they want the game to work, and they have a very clear idea of what should be happening, but they don't communicate every base concept to you. Sometimes I felt like information was missing, or like things weren't given enough detail for me to feel completely comfortable with how I was playing the game. I also think that there are some very serious squeezes on resource availability in the game that detract from the fun. There are only a very limited number of cards that are visible at any given time for you to take, and while you can pay to draw cards from the deck, you don't know what you're going to get. And every script has requirements that you're trying to make, which means that you can't just take any card from the display. I think this is especially true for games with lower player counts, where you only have 3 cards on the market at a time. If you can't get the cards that you need, especially those blue production cards without which a movie can't even make it to the market, then you're in for a lot of frustration. At the same time, while resources feel very tight, I feel like the game itself is maybe a little bit bloated. There are plenty of options for things to do that make sense, but I also feel like this game doesn't run like a well-oiled machine. There are aspects of play that feel a little bit clunky, especially combined with the rulebook and with the difficulty in getting resources. You don't always feel like you're having a smooth play experience. And I actually think that that is exacerbated by the fact that there's so many different optional modes in the game. With more players, you can play with the Black Dossier. There are boards that you can add or take away in the game to kind of play the way you want. And while that's a sentiment that I respect, I also think that in this case, we have a situation where the designers wanted everything to be in their game. And when they put everything in there, the elements that would have made it great maybe don't shine quite as much. And those elements that I've talked about combine in a way that makes the game not that exciting. It's really not that fun to play. I can see things that I should do. I can see things that are strategically smart, but I don't necessarily get a lot of satisfaction out of doing it. With super tight resources, it's hard to make that really big power play of a movie with a great script. And instead you kind of find yourself scrambling to release things that'll get you small amounts of points, trying to hit trends. And it makes it feel like I don't really have multiple paths to victory in the game. So this is a respectable effort in the sense that I can see what the designers wanted out of this game, and I think that there are some good ideas in it. However, as a final product, it doesn't quite come together for me. And for that reason, I give it a 4 out of 10. Happy gaming.